listening to America First Radio.
And we're gonna win, win, win. And we're gonna make America great again.
Here is your host, Paul Adams.
In episode 6, I used 4 words to describe the RNC convention. I said, we have a president. For the DNC convention, there are 2 words to best describe it. Kabuki theater. Where do we begin? Let's start off with Obama's comments. He neglected to mention that every 83 minutes there's a terrorist attack, that health insurance costs are at an all-time high, labor force participation, record lows, median family income, record lows, home ownership, record lows, money printing, record highs. But hey, in his world and in Hillary's world, America has never been greater. Yeah. Thanks to WIKI-LEAKS, 20,000 emails were published a day before the convention started, revealing that the primaries were rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton, that the protests against Trump were planned, that there was a deliberate smear campaign in place to demonize Trump and Bernie Sanders, that Latinos were referred to as taco bowls, and the plot thickened when the key operative, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC party chair, stepped down the day before the convention started. Frankly, I am appalled at the reaction of the Jewish community. I hear them saying things like, people make mistakes. She worked so hard all these years. She put her heart and soul into it. Somebody else says, I can tell you that people overwhelmingly in her district are supporting her, and this will do nothing to change that. She's been good on issues such as women's rights, children's issues, environmental issues, public education, healthcare, and of course Israel. I think the Jewish community will stand strongly by her. Somebody else said, as far as the Jewish community goes, I've spoken to a number of Jewish constituents and leaders who are disappointed that there was this culture in the DNC where senior staffers would actually be talking about using a candidate's Judaism against him. So these were some of the comments. And my reaction to all that is, really? Really, folks? If some miscreant by any other faith or ethnicity had done something similar, they would have been hung out to dry. Do you people really believe that a congresswoman who is supposed to be the paragon of circumspect behavior, the beacon of honorable, ethical, moral leadership to our young people, should be given a pass for sabotaging Bernie Sanders' chances of winning the primary? When she has no remorse, there's been no apologies, nothing. Are you not worried at all that our democratic system is placed in jeopardy while the whole world is watching us? Really, people? I mean, really? Are you not concerned at all at the image we're projecting as a nation? Are you not at all ashamed that a Jewish woman has smeared the reputation of the entire Jewish population? Because I feel bad for the Jewish community. I really think you deserve a lot better. People like Debbie Wasserman Schultz need to be kept out of public life. They are bad for PR. Very, very bad for PR. But, hey, I get it. The ends justify the means. In your world, you want Warhawk Hillary in the White House. to continue to take marching orders from Israel, to destabilize the Middle East, to enrich the arms manufacturers, and basically do Israel's bidding. Except you are forgetting one thing. In this election cycle, if America does not come first this time around, Israel will be in the toilet. Because America's debt to GDP ratio is now over 104%, compared to that of Greece, which is at 176%. So we're on that path. And if we don't crank up GDP and or lower the national debt, we'll be where Greece is in 4 years. And then we could very easily step off the edge and be like Venezuela. I want to stray off here into a tangent. Why? Because I can. Since we are on the topic of the Jewish demographic, let me get this off my chest before I kick the bucket. And I mean this seriously. On a personal note here, I had 2 heart attacks, and the doctors are not giving me good odds. They call it aggressive congenital heart disease. I've had lots of stents. You get the picture. And I've already had a near-death experience and have had a very full life. So I have zero fear of death, non-zip, nada. So if you wish me dead, no skin off my teeth. But as long as I have a pulse, I want to engage in a no-holds-barred civil conversation. So here's what I want to say about the Jewish people, who are bold and brilliant, admirable, who have been honed and molded and shaped just like a diamond, refined by time and extreme historical tectonic pressures. We have to go back in time to when the 10 older brothers were going to kill their younger brother Joseph, Jacob's favorite son. But not having the nerve to kill him, instead they dumped him into a pit for the wild animals to tear him apart. How thoughtful of them, right? Later, they rescued him and sold him as a slave, which gives new meaning to family love and sets a new benchmark for slavery. We all know the story. God was with Joseph. He rose to power under Pharaoh. Joseph the dreamer made provisions for the regional famine by building storehouses of grain. His brothers were sent by Jacob, a.k.a. Israel, to Egypt to buy food for the family, only to come back empty-handed. Long story short, Judah persuades Jacob to send Benjamin along with him to Egypt for the second go-around. Judah says to Jacob, "Send the boy with me," that's Benjamin, "and let us be off and go, if we are to survive and not die, we, you, and our dependents." So survival of the family is more important than the risk of Benjamin's life, and Jacob recognizes the argument of survival. And so on to Egypt they return. When they arrive in Egypt, there's a great family reunion. Joseph reveals himself as their long-lost brother. And eventually Jacob, that is Israel, and his family move into Egypt. The operative word here is family. Hundreds of years later, Moses is called by God to free the Israelites from Egypt. So, cutting to the chase, Moses leads all 12 tribes of Israel out of Egypt. Roughly 600,000 Israelites. They wander into the desert for 40 years and finally settle in the land of Canaan. And each tribe is given an inheritance. Fast forward to our day and age. The nation of Israel is formed in 1948 and is settled exclusively by the tribe of Judah, becoming the first Jewish nation in our time, in the modern age. Here's my question, and I'm looking for civil conversation, okay? Not I'm not a race baiter. I'm not looking to offend anybody. My question is, why are not the other 11 tribes ever mentioned when we speak of Israel? I would like some rabbi to answer these questions. Why is there no discussion of the other 11 tribes returning to modern-day Israel? Just as a matter of respect, as a matter of family protocol, not that it should be insisted upon, but just as a matter of decorum. Why is not the tribe, let's say, of Joseph welcomed with open arms into modern-day Israel for simply having saved the family from famine long, long ago? Just out of respect. Never mind that Joseph was Israel's or Jacob's favorite son. Does it not seem rather strange for a family to become so detached and dysfunctional? And yet we argue about accepting others and inclusiveness and all these aphorisms. Love trumps hate. Give me a break. I'm a reasonable person. Let me know what you think. You know, I like to be fair-minded. I'm a Christian/Mormon, and I have literally obliterated Mormons like Mitt Romney and Glenn Beck with scathing commentaries. You can check my previous podcast, episode 6. I like to call it as I see it. I do not make special concessions for Mormons. In fact, I expect a whole lot more from that group. And I'm a lot harder on them when they sell us out. So when I see someone like Debbie Wasserman Schultz get a pass by the Jewish community, I really wonder why the favoritism. Schultz, who sabotaged America's democracy, has absolutely no business walking the hallways of power. I don't care if she is a Jewish princess or has royal blood. It doesn't matter to me. And to add insult to injury, she is immediately hired by the Clinton campaign, only proving that crooks take care of their own as long as they follow orders. And none of you people give a rat's ass about all this? But we know why you want Clinton in the White House. I already went over all that. Back to the convention. It got very surreal. At one point, the jumbo screen showed pictures of the Russian Navy. Yeah. They were showing 5 Russian destroyers. Another big misstep by the Democrats. And the whole world saw this. It was pathetic, disgraceful, shoddy. Especially when you consider that no American flags were seen on the stage until the second day of the conference. And then when a preacher started to pray and uttered Hillary's name, she was booed, and the crowd started chanting, "Bernie, Bernie, Bernie." A 4-foot blue wall surrounded the DNC stage on day 1. Isn't that ironic? And to make it even more ironic, they let an illegal immigrant speak. From there, the Baltimore mayor forgot to strike the gavel, as did the chairwoman. Twice she forgot to strike the gavel. Total ditz. And while protesters outside were held back behind fences, Chelsea was humanizing her mother in a last-ditch effort to sell her to the American people. Just a lot more damage control after the WIKI-LEAKS. And to top it all off, there was a furious thunderstorm that was raging outside while Hillary spoke, with lightning and all kinds of mayhem. My favorite soundbite out of Hillary was, "We are going to follow the money." How impudent, how arrogant, how calloused, how contemptuous. She was really, really shoving it in our face then. And all this while WikiLeaks reveals the DNC refers to Latinos as taco bowls, and as there is unanimous consent outside by protesters to lock Hillary up. They were chanting, "Lock her up, lock her up, lock her up." and as Bernie supporters were denied entry to the convention hall. But to make up, the DNC hired paid actors and bussed them in and had them seated in reserved seats to support Hillary. Apart from the WikiLeaks revealing that the DNC rigged the primaries in favor of Hillary or planned a smear campaign on Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, what is probably most disturbing of all for a lot of people is that there's now clear evidence that the mainstream media is in cahoots with the Clinton machine and that the DNC, yes, the DNC, screens and edits news stories. Does it get any more surreal than that? The funniest soundbite from the Bernie supporters that I've heard so far came from one fellow who said, "We are going to vote for Hillary now because we want to hold her accountable when she's president." Hey, geniuses, snap out of it. If you think she's going to answer your phone calls to account to you, you are delusional. If you think you're being patriotic by voting for her to keep her feet on the fire, to look over her shoulder to ensure the country is on course, you are delusional. Just as you were when you thought Bernie would be president when he never attacked her once on her email servers, once on her racketeering, once on her Benghazi debacle. Bernie simply was the paid Pied Piper. He simply rounded up votes away from the right to deliver to Hillary. That was the deal. And you thought democracy was alive and well in America. Right. Now it's bash Hillary time. It's a ritual for me, but you know, there she was in white, pure and innocent, as fake as a forged $100 bill. This whole spectacle, this projection of the virgin inviolate Savior with a vagina, along with the speeches that preceded her, was the culmination of months of preparation by the focus groups, the marketing gurus, the speech writers, and the image consultants. It was staged kabuki theater. As a comparison, I want to focus on President Harry Truman for a bit, and you'll see how Hillary comes out in relief here later. He was the only president in the 20th century to not attend college. Starting at age 17, Harry worked at a long series of menial jobs. He was timekeeper for a railroad construction gang, a mailroom clerk for the Kansas City Star, a bookkeeper in a Kansas City bank, and so forth and so on. Most of his energy and earnings, however, were devoted to helping his parents build up a new family farm. At age 33, he was still living at home and had failed to distinguish himself in any way. So he entered the military and fought in World War I, served with distinction, and after the war he went back to Independence, Missouri, and as a local hero with a new self-confidence, he decided to go into business. And with one of his war buddies, he opened a haberdashery in Kansas City. At first they prospered, but after 2 years, business slumped and the store had to close. So, too proud to declare bankruptcy, Truman promised to pay off all his debts. And later, as a Democrat, he entered politics, became presiding judge for all of Jackson County. It was a figurative role. And he saved the taxpayers thousands of dollars, serving with determination, efficiency, and scrupulous honesty, which were indeed rare qualities in a man, even back then. When FDR began his fourth term in 1945, Truman was his vice president. On April 12, 1945, FDR passed away, and it fell on Truman to become the 33rd President of the United States. The world was shocked that an undistinguished unknown like Truman should be president. He was plain-spoken, blunt, He had a common sense and never minced words. He called a spade, and sometimes worse than a spade. Let's say he relied on colorful language. In that regard, he was a lot like Donald Trump. He made the right decisions despite popular support. His decisiveness defined his presidency. He came up with a slogan, "The buck stops here," and today he is hailed as one of the great presidents of the United States. He had to make the decision of dropping the first atomic bomb on Japan. After a careful cost and benefit analysis, with his down-to-earth common sense, it was made clear to him that he had no other option but to drop the bomb. Because in his books, American lives came first. It was not the munitions and arms contractors that came first. He gave us the Truman Doctrine, which gave America the right to defend any nation that was threatened by communism. He introduced the Marshall Plan to bring relief to war-torn Europe. He fought for civil rights. He ended segregation in the military. And in 1948, his popularity was as low as any executives could possibly get. Yet he campaigned hard for re-election and was re-elected. He had to enter the Korean War in order to contain communism. Also, he had to support the French in Southeast Asia against communism, which opened up the door to the Vietnam War. Here's an audio clip of him. Just remember, when you listen to this man speak, he was not a multi-billion-dollar real estate tycoon. He was not charismatic. He was plain, down-to-earth, and his last business experience was as a failed haberdasher. Here he is.
My fellow Americans, I want to talk to you plainly tonight about what we're doing in Korea and about our policy in the Far East. In the simplest terms, what we're doing in Korea is this: we are trying to prevent a third world war. The communists in the Kremlin are engaged in a monstrous conspiracy to stamp out freedom all over the world. If they were to succeed, the United States would be numbered among their principal victims. It must be clear to everyone that the United States cannot and will not sit idly by and await foreign conquest. The only question is, when is the best time to meet the threat, and how is the best time to meet it?
Now, listen to him one more time after the Hiroshima bomb was dropped. He sounds like he is reading a bedtime story.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, these bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe. The force from which the sun draws its power has been loosed against those who brought war to the Far East. We have spent more than $2 billion on the greatest scientific gamble in history, and we have won. But the greatest marvel is not the size of the enterprise, its secrecy, or its cost, but the achievement of scientific brains in making it work.
So what does Harry Truman have to do with anything? If we compare Democratic Harry Truman to Donald Trump, we would have to say that Trump has a ton more of that no-nonsense common sense than Harry does, wouldn't you say? I mean, all things being equal, dollar for dollar, I would say that Donald Trump has maybe 10,000 times more common sense and let's get it done chutzpah than any president in the history of the United States. Did I put that in some perspective? Now I want to compare Truman's legacy to Hillary's record. I believe that Hillary Clinton should apologize at least for bullying into silence the woman her husband raped, lying about the video that triggered Benghazi, ignoring 600 requests for backup from Ambassador Stevens, storing top-secret intelligence in unsecured server, deleting 30,000 emails which were property of the United States, ordering staff to change classification headings of emails, receiving $100 million from Saudi donors and Chinese donors, using the Clinton Foundation for racketeering purposes, and defrauding investors in the Whitewater scam, and also for ruining the life of a 12-year-old rape victim, and also for ruining the life of a travel office administrator, and for popularizing Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. The list is much longer. I think she should apologize for all that before she does jail time. She should also apologize for Bill Clinton signing NAFTA and exporting jobs. So I want to ask you this. How can you possibly compare her character, her crimes, her gross negligence, her stealing the primary from Bernie Sanders, to, say, Harry Truman's impeccable credentials, to Trump's extroverted character and minor missteps in life? Case closed. My big concern that I have with this election, it's not so much that the primaries were stolen from Bernie Sanders. My concern is that the powers that be will follow through with a stolen election. They're very capable of that, and I hope that Paul Manafort and Trump are taking very careful precautions in getting prepared. This is not just a few conspiracy theorists out there saying it. For those of you who like to put everyone in a dunce hat for not agreeing with you, we have the reputed controlled magazine The Economist splashing this headline. Quote, "Globalists must rally behind Hillary." Unquote. See, now things are unveiling. The truth is coming out. The false dichotomy of right versus left, of Democrats versus Republicans is being unveiled. It's really all about globalism going head-to-head with nationalism. How many backup plans does Soros have up his sleeve to bring down America? Will he create a false flag to cancel the election? Will he steal the election from Trump? Will he get Hillary in and then pop her to leave Kane as the globalist president with no skeletons in his closet? Will he cause an American spring by hiring anarchists to storm Washington, D.C.? The thing about it is, a wolf never tips his hand to the sheep. That's why we have to be wide awake and vigilant, my fellow Americans. This is for all the marbles. It's America first or globalism. And globalism means Europe 2.0 or Venezuela 2.0. Do you get the picture? I hope so. May God bless America.